Welcome to Come Chat with Sima, and today I am in my house sitting with the beautiful...
I'm Nehanda Truscott-Reid. It's so lovely to be here with you, Sima. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to share space and to share with our audience on my platform. So Nehanda, I would like you to first of all introduce what you do, what you're about, who you are. Like, I want details.
Okay. My name is Nehanda Truscott-Reid. I am on Instagram as Soul Mama Coach. I am the founder of the Soul Mama Journey, which really is a nourishing of women who are on the transition of motherhood. So women who are wanting to conceive and do some healing around their womb, or women who are pregnant and they realize that they have a whole wealth of fears around birth, or relationship issues with their own mothers, or things that they're wanting to consciously show up differently for and through. And so I will support women through each of those stages. So I kind of do a deep dive for women who are wanting to go in on their fertility and their wellness. Then I go in with women who are pregnant and wanting to bond with that baby and to kind of set themselves up and set their container and set their lives up to really receive that baby and not be kind of unprepared. And then women who are mothers already, who have children, perhaps multiple children, and have found that they've kind of lost their way, lost their selves, lost their identity, are feeling depleted, energy is low, helping those women to kind of come back to themselves in a way where they can reclaim their energy, reclaim their vitality, and come forward in motherhood in a way that feels really good for them and for their children. So yeah, it's a real honor to do this work, and I'm learning all the time, but that's the Soul Mama Journey in a nutshell.
Wow, so much beautiful, powerful things you're doing there. And what made you decide to take this journey?
Well, I think before I was a mother myself, so I have two children. My daughter is 5 and my son is 3. And even before I was in the space of consciously calling them in, I just knew that there was so much that felt like it was being overlooked when it came to mothers. So even in the way that we have the kind of work maternity system, you know, like the support for women who are going off on maternity leave and then returning to work potentially, like there's nothing in place in the workspace, there is nothing in place in the community, and all of the things that were kind of available I felt were very narrow in their reach. So being a woman of color, going to an NCT group, or going to hypnobirthing classes, or going to pregnancy yoga, I was always the only woman of color in the room. And I was like, why is this the case? So obviously we're in London. Is this a case of financially women not seeing that that has a value? Is that a case where the spaces themselves don't feel accessible? Is it a case where the women who are hosting these spaces aren't diverse themselves, so they don't attract diverse people? So I just started to notice that there was a real difference between the experience of motherhood as was being had by white middle class women, who were the kind of mainstream depiction and symbol of motherhood, and the women that I knew and were around and who weren't accessing any of those things. And I was like, I can be the person who bridges that gap, who can bring those tools, those resources, that knowledge back into the community in a way that feels relevant for us and resonant for us, but also in a way that's accessible and is safe. And so I started doing Soul Mama circles, and that was a really beautiful space to kind of have sisterhoods with women at all different stages of motherhood. But then I realized that, you know, I did need to kind of deep dive with women on a one-to-one. So I trained as a holistic wellness coach, understanding how energy works and how that shifts when you move into motherhood, and how our beliefs affect how we show up, you know, in our motherhood journeys. And so that kind of took me onto the coaching path, which I still do now. And so all of that has been with that intention of helping more mothers heal in a way that feels relevant and resonant for us.
Wow. It's so true, because for me, I've not birthed any babies myself
Mm,
as yet, but I have so many people around me that are mothers.
yeah.
And, for them, they sometimes I can see that they find the journey, it could be lonely. It could be, I know it's heavy to say, but sometimes they could find being a mum a burden.
Mm,
Um, or not taking the joy from the experience. Do you know what I mean? Or like, I'm someone that facilitates events, or I'm someone that be like, right, in the 6 weeks holiday, let's gather up and go to the beach or bring the children or whatever. And then I've got some people that might not be up for it, because as well, where they've been just a mum for years,
yeah.
they now have got like a social anxiety, don't even know how to come into these spaces and mingle, but not knowing that actually you've got something in common with all of us. So it's very important that the work that you're doing, because I can see it. I wasn't even aware about a soul mama journey before 2020. Do you
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, wow, because if you're saying that when you go to these NCT classes, or you go into these certain spaces and you're the only woman of color, then, and I can see it, not even being a mum yet,
Yeah.
then there's a gap. There's a
Definitely.
massive gap. There's a massive gap. Definitely.
And I feel like that is for a lot of different reasons. And so for me, I never place the blame on the mother. Like you said, it sounds heavy, but some women are experiencing motherhood as a burden. And
Mm,
because there is that fear of it sounding heavy, or it being judged, or people not identifying or being a safe space for that woman, she might never share that truth, right? She might share
mm,
that I am struggling, I am feeling lonely, I need help, I need support, like my mental health is not stable, like any of those, a myriad of experiences that women have. I feel like there is a fear in speaking our truth, that there will be a judgment, that there is something wrong with you, that you are not capable, or that perhaps your child ends up being taken into care, or there's like these real deep fears that if a woman expresses her truth, that she might not be having everything all together, that there is going to be some really big consequence that comes off of that. And I think there are valid reasons why that is true for women in the Black community specifically, that the kind of interfacing with authority, or with the medical system, or with therapy, hasn't always been a positive historical experience. And so
mm.
the kind of go-to of a woman thinking, I'm struggling with something, let me go and seek that service or seek that support, is more likely to be, let me talk to my mum, or let me go to church, or let me find a sister friend. But not every woman has that network. And so it's for the women who have identified that, I could do with some support, not because I'm necessarily in crisis mode, but even if you are, of course, that support's there. But for women who just know that they could be doing things in a way that feels more joyful, that feels more present, that feels
Mm,
more like you are choosing and consciously aware of what is happening, rather than just getting through and reacting, because that's what leads to burnout and overwhelm that I see happen. And then, by the time your children are grown and you're like, where is my last 15, 20 years gone?
yeah.
Because you haven't been cognizant and present to what the resources would be that could have supported you along that way. And so
Mm,
that for me has been kind of the deepest motivation, is like just bringing women into a safe space to realize that it is safe to share your truth, that it is okay if it feels like it's too much, or that you don't have the support that you needed. But there are ways that you can tap into that support, and trying to bring all of those things together for women, so that they don't feel so alone, so that they don't feel so under-resourced, and they don't feel so drained by it, because it's a lot to place
yeah.
on a woman. We know that saying, it takes a village to raise a child, but none of us are tapped into villages, right? So it's kind of how can I then move through and navigate this journey in a way that's still going to be positive and healthy and vibrant for me and my child and my partner potentially. And that's the work that I'm always teasing out, basically.
And trying to bring back that village vibe, because back home in certain countries there is that, you know, like I've got a cousin, I want to pick apart two cousin situation, but the first cousin, you know, her partner's Nigerian, and when they had their first daughter together, you know, I remember when it was for her time, when it was time for her to go back to work, they were going to bring his nan from Nigeria to support and look after the child. So it's like, you don't have to do the nursery fees, and you don't have to, you know, this is what we're going to do as a family sort of thing to support you. So maybe like after, I think, I don't know, maybe 6 months into having the baby, she would have come to the UK and probably just, you know, spent time with them in their home. And then I guess in the next 6 months, which would have been a year, she would be now ready to go back to work. But Nan's now kind of ready to, or understands your way of things, how you operate, and then will look after and support the family. We don't have that here. I feel like here we're quite selfish.
I don't think it's selfish. I feel like we have been conditioned into aspiring for the nuclear family. Like, we have been ingrained that this kind of 2-person household is the ideal, right? And, you know, to have your grandparents or your parents living with you is a burden. And so, you know, because we are living in a society that doesn't center family and doesn't honor parenthood, and is prioritizing, you know, the capitalist interest of work as being the aspiration of life, we have been kind of just segued and funneled into that thinking that is like, I'm going to get my career, I'm going to do my job, I'm going to get my pay, and I'm going to get my nice house with my husband and my children, and that's going to be me. And that's why we have old people's homes, and that's why we don't have that you know, honoring of the eldership that comes with those other communities and cultures that we're speaking of. And sometimes we still see that intact, you know, especially like you described with African families, and some Caribbean families, especially women who find themselves parenting alone in a single parent home. It's not uncommon for, you know, auntie, grandma, mum to all be in the same house with the kids, you know, because we have adapted to ways of surviving where financially that makes a lot more sense. It makes sense with the childcare, it makes sense with the outgoings of the household. And so we have adapted in these ways, but very rarely is it a conscious choosing, or is it a, like, you know, a conversation that happens in the family from the mother's perspective of like, this is what would really support me, and this is how I want it to be, and this is how I'm going to open up my home to accommodate you. It tends to just be like oh, I was living with my mom, I got pregnant, I'm still with my mom, I've still got the baby, you know, it's that kind of situation. So for me, it's just about bringing consciousness to all of the choices that we have, so that things don't feel as hard as they have done, where we're in this kind of survival mode of like, you know, I didn't expect to be pregnant, now I'm pregnant. Okay, oh, I didn't expect to get pregnant again, now I'm pregnant again. You know, like those kinds of situations, if moved in with a much more kind of consciousness and intentionality, can feel a lot more embodied, a lot more powerful than being in that reactive space that I think a lot of women find ourselves in for no fault of our own, but just because we haven't had these conversations, and our parents perhaps haven't sat down and spoken to us about their experiences. And that's again the fragmenting of the village, where we're not passing down the lessons before, you know, the next generation's replaying them again. And so for me, all of this work is about breaking those generational cycles, but also taking the threads that are actually going to serve us and that continue to be positive and healthy, and taking those forward in a way that is like, yeah, this can work, this can build a stronger future for my next generation, you know.
Definitely. Communication is so key. Definitely. Communication is so healing. Like, everyone says, oh, Sim, you got such an old soul. Yes, because I like my old music and whatever. But I like sitting with the elders and reasoning.
Yeah.
That is the best kind of conversation you can invite me to. Do you know what I mean? Like, who's going to be there? Okay, you know, so what am I going to say? Because whilst they're here, listen, we need to take advantage of them because they have so much knowledge. They have so much. I mean, we can modernize it a little bit, you know what I mean?
Adapt, exactly.
Yeah,
Adapt to the update.
exactly. But it's like they have the gems and they have the natural remedies. They have the intuition. They're sharp and they've got the experience as well. They have the experience as well, definitely.
And it's a blessing that you have access to elders like that. You know, a lot of us, you know, I know even with my podcast, for example, I've made a really intentional choice to not just speak to my peers, but to speak to women who are in that elder space, because for me that's where the wisdom lies. But it's not always cognizant with aging. You know, not everybody who ages becomes an elder in the sense of wisdom holder, you know. And so it's about selecting the elders that you see in your community or that you have around you through family that are going to pour forth into you in a positive way, because sometimes those elders can just be holding on to the negative pattern that has been ingrained from colonial times. You know what I mean? It's not every person, but yeah, I feel like that is one link that has been severed. I know I didn't grow up with grandparents, and I had to consciously seek out wise women, you know, because it wasn't just available to me like that. So it's beautiful that you've identified that and you've cultivated those relationships too.
Yeah. You mentioned podcasts.
Yes.
You do podcasts. So tell us a bit about your podcasts, please.
Yes. So the Soul Mama podcast, I birthed this out of my own desire to hear conversations with women who represented a background that was similar to mine. So for me, when I had my daughter and I was at home and my husband had gone back to work and I was just like me and this little baby, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I am yearning for adult conversation, and to have some kind of witnessing of what this experience is, because I find that transition was so upheaving, right? And so I was seeking out all of these parenting podcasts, all of these motherhood podcasts, and they were literally just like white women after white women after white women after white women, and their experiences, their perspectives. Of course, there are universal things that go across motherhood, across races, across class, but there were lots of things that I couldn't relate to, you know, like women who had nannies, or, you know, women who were talking about you know, what private nursery versus what, and I was just like, that's not where my mind's at. I really want to have a spiritual conversation. I really want to have a conversation that is more about what's happening on a soul level right now. And then when I saw out Americans, so there was a lot of Black American motherhood podcasts, but again, the vibration of that was like so it was very bold, very brash, very like girlfriend, and very cliquey. And I was like, that's not me either. So I was like, I'm just gonna start my own podcast with women that are in, you know, my network, who inspire me and who I believe have a lot of wisdom and knowledge to pour forth. And I'm just gonna see what happens, right? And so far it's been really good. I'm about 33 episodes deep now, and each one has gone on a theme that I feel is really resonant and pertinent, and that I hadn't really seen in the motherhood podcast space. So we've talked about liberatory parenting. What does it mean to decolonize our approaches to parenting and education and marriage? What does the Black family actually mean in society today? You know, what do we mean when we talk about spirituality, and how do we impart that to our children? How do we really heal in a postpartum nourishing way after you've had a child and you don't have access to all of the elders who had the wisdom of the herbs and all of the things that our parents or grandparents might have had access to? And so these conversations were from places where I was like, I really want to bring forth that that knowledge in a way that will support other women who are also looking for that knowledge gap as well. And the feedback so far has been really positive, and the guests who've agreed to come on the podcast have been amazing. I've had Queen Afua most recently, author of Sacred Woman. I've had Jessica Huey, author of Purpose. I've had some really big names, as well as some kind of thought leaders around particular subjects. And so I've liked to keep that mix, but they're all women of color, and we've all kind of identified that commonality when we've gone in on those conversations. So yeah, one of the things that I found really interesting is how many white women have then written to me and been like, this has been a revelation to me, because in my mind I was thinking, well, you know, this is probably only going to resonate with a particular audience, but actually it has been an education for a lot of white women who hadn't had that conversation with any other women. And so I really like that now, that, you know, it's more mainstream than I had expected. And yeah, I think that's a positive thing. So yeah.
Definitely. I've tuned in to a few of them, and I must say, boy, they make my, because what I do is I put it on in the car as I'm driving, and I'm like, yeah, like a lot of the things resonates with me as well. Do you know, I think it's beautiful, like you said, this is what I was looking for and I couldn't find it. I'm listening to like podcasts and this is not what I want to hear. This doesn't resonate with me. So let me just do it and see where it takes me. And that is just so powerful. That's beautiful. And that's one thing that I try to encourage in everything that I do. That if you want it, if you enjoy it, then just do it. You know what I mean? Just do it. That's it. So yeah, big up to you for that.
And that's what you're doing with this, right? It's like you're seeing on YouTube, you know, perhaps the lack around the types of conversations that you want to have, or the type of people that you know are in your community who deserve a showcase, and you have that platform. You've created that space to create that conversation, and in the same way, it will resonate with those people who tune into that same energy. So
and that's how it literally all started, you know. Like I always share that story. One day, me and my friend, we wanted to meet up, have something to eat. At the time, we was looking for a vegan restaurant, Caribbean type feel, so a bit like Love Gift. We was looking for a Love Gift, but at the time she was closed, and there was nothing in this area, South London or South East London. And then what happened is that we actually didn't even meet. Me and my friend didn't meet. He was like, okay, well, we might as well, I don't know what happened to that. But then it's like it sparked something in my mind. And then shortly after, I sold my car, and it meant that now I had to walk more, get on buses, get on trains. But now, I guess that initial spark, subconsciously, I'm now aware of new things in the community that I never saw before. And I'm like, even a park down the road. At the time, I was living here for probably about 7 years and didn't even know that there was this green space there. And I was like, what? This is crazy. And then I was like, you know what? I just feel that, especially for our culture, our community, there's never too much platforms to big us up. There's never too much to share what we're doing. So let me create something that I can share who we are, the magic we're creating, the community unity, the village vibes that we are trying to bring back. Do you get what I mean? This ain't no competition thing. This is, wow, this is what my sister's doing. This is what my brother's doing.
Yes,
I'm feeling it, you know, like
and we need that, and it's a nice to be able to have a space that people can come to and see that. So thank you for creating that.
Thank you. So I know we're gonna wrap up soon, but before we do, I wanted to tap into this. I want you to share your experience of pregnancy, your experience of childbirth. I don't know if I should say this now, but I'm going to say it. My cousin, and not just my cousin, but I say my cousin because when she had her daughter, I was her birthing partner.
Oh, wow.
So, but some women say that like once you have the baby, like an overwhelming of emotions just take over you.
Yeah.
And like, I remember my cousin's like, Sim, I just wanted to cry for no reason. There's no reason. I just wanted to cry. Like, I don't, and I said, but you didn't cry. She's like, and I guess maybe ego, or I don't know if ego is the right word, but something came in and kind of held, that she held it. But she was like, even like if her partner, when she's back home now, if her partner had gone out to the shop, you know, she would say that sometimes she even felt lonely. And I was like, wow, you know, so I don't know if you've ever heard that before,
Yeah.
but I want to find out your experience, and also if you could tap into what that could be. Why does that happen?
Yeah,
If that's a common thing.
definitely. So so first time around I was super intentional, really in a steady marriage, and knew that, you know, this is the time we want to call in our child, and it didn't happen straight away. And I remember being like, what? Like everyone else is like getting pregnant and people aren't even doing this work. And, you know, I just had a moment where I was like, I'm doing all of this work and it's still not manifesting in the way that I expected. So that was the beginning really of my own personal healing journey, because I had to really take a pause and be like, what is it that might be blocking this when I say that this is what I really want? And so I had to really kind of go back to my childhood and be like, are there things about motherhood or my association with motherhood that I still hold to be negative? And how can I heal that and forgive that and make peace with that in a way that then allows me to be truly open to receiving this child, you know? And so I find that that's really common, especially with women who have been in a career, you know, pushing all of their energy into a career path. And then they're like, cool, now I've got X amount of months, I need to get this baby. And then they're like, oh, it's not happening like as quickly. And it's like there's a whole different energy that it takes to conceive and attract than it does to effort and put out. You know, it, to me, that's the difference between the kind of masculine and feminine. And so a lot of that is bringing women back into their feminine to prepare them really for that unfolding of motherhood. So that was my conception journey. Then when I was pregnant, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do all the things. I read all the books, I went to all the classes, which is why I could speak to who was in these classes, or more importantly, who was not in these classes, because these were the classes that were supposedly preparing us for birth and for you know, to have a really healthy delivery. And we know the statistics around Black women and infant mortality, and Black women, their own mortality in regards to the hospital and the services. So for me, I was like, I'm going to have my doula, I need to have a Black doula, and I need to feel safe in my choices to be able to birth. And so again, now that leads me into the work where a lot of the things that we're talking about with a woman who's pregnant is about coming back into your sovereignty and not deferring all of your power to the midwife or the doctor, so that you know, I know how my baby's doing because I'm tuned into my baby, right? I know when something's wrong. That means you have to listen to me when I'm telling you something's wrong. And that shifting in energy changes the way that you then go on to interface at any stage during your pregnancy or birth, right? So for me, my daughter was due to be a home birth, but then my doula showed me that she was back to back. Which meant that I was pushing a lot earlier than I should have been. And so she was like, I actually think we should go into the birth center just to make sure that you have support available, because doulas are not hands-on birth support. And so I was like, okay, we went into the birth center, and within about 4 or 5 hours, my daughter was born in the water. And I remember just being quite shocked, like, as at how quickly it unfolded and how intense it was. And you know, I remember them saying, like, you know, pick up your baby, and she was just like floating in the water. And I was like, oh, like, oh my gosh, I built so much up to the moment of birth that I hadn't given any thought to what happens then on. Like, birth was the destination, not the beginning. And again, I feel like a lot of first time mothers do that, where it's like, I just want to make sure I have a healthy birth. And you're not thinking, what about when I take the baby home, or I'm at home with the baby, you know, what then? And so I realized, like, whoa, I had to then relearn a whole next set of ways of being to adjust to the fact that I had just birthed this baby and I hadn't expected the ways that I was going to feel, right? And so again, a lot of healing work, a lot of self-reflection, a lot of physical, having to replenish my energy because I just felt really depleted after that birth. So then by the time that I got pregnant with my second child, I knew my emphasis now is on my postpartum healing. It's not even birth. Like, I know I can birth. I know that's going to be good. And that assurance helped me to kind of visualize and continue to build up that rhythm and that knowledge in my body, which is basically what hypnobirthing is. It's like using the breath and using affirmations and using language to really create the birth that you want. So I applied all of those same practices, but now I was also saying, I'm gonna need somebody to come and help with this, or I'm gonna need to have somebody do the food because I'm not gonna be able to cook, or I'm choosing not to cook, or I wanna have massage in my postpartum as well. I wanna have a closing the bones ceremony. You know, I wanna have rituals that are going to help me to feel better so that I can more able be there for this son and for my daughter, who is at that time like 2.5. And that made so much difference, right? So I blended my placenta and I drank my placenta, you know, like I did so many things that I didn't even have knowledge of first time around, which then meant that I healed so much quicker. That birth was very different, much longer. He was a much bigger baby. But again, that emotion that you spoke about with your cousin, I was bawling from the first contraction hit because it was literally a remembering that this is the moment where, as a woman, you are returning to the most primal of your instincts. You are literally crossing over from this realm to the spirit realm to collect your child and come back, right? And some women don't make it back. Some babies don't make it back. So you know you are going to your end to come back, right? And it's that ultimate surrender that when you're in it, you're like, this is life. This is what life is. This is what life means. And, you know, women can birth in so many different ways. Not every woman is overwhelmed by emotion in that way. And it's not to any judgment on women who doesn't feel like that. You know, some women are having cesareans, and for whatever reasons, that then there may be complications with their births. But I feel like there is that kind of ongoing realization, or that dawning of what I call like a thinning of the veil, which kind of strips away all of the stuff that we've thought has been so important up until this time. And you realize that the only thing that is important is me, this child, and us being healthy and well. Right. And that kind of overwhelm that comes with, like, I'm the one responsible for keeping this child alive, and everything that I do is going to have an impact on this child. That can be really overwhelming for a lot of women, especially if they don't feel supported or they've never had that support themselves, which is then what I feel leads to postpartum depression, or, you know, any of those kinds of diseases or ill health that we see happen in that first year. And so for me, that kind of maternity mental health starts with conception. It starts with preparing yourself, healing the wounds that might still be present, facing all of the things that have happened in your life already or are present in your relationship, doing that work kind of on the spiritual healing sense, so that it doesn't hit you in that way when you have your child and you're at home and you're like, what am I doing? How can I do this?
Yeah.
But you actually have the resources to reach from. So yeah, I use my experiences to encourage women and to motivate women who have been told by doctors that you can't, or you know, you're high risk, or any of those things. It's like, actually take your language away from my experience, because you do have power to change and to curate and to create an experience that is going to be really healthy for you. And doctors can support you in that if you choose to have a hospital birth. But if you choose to go, you know, a home birth or a kind of unassisted birth, then how can you actually resource yourself, rather than just waiting and expecting that everything is going to go well, but actually preparing yourself to do that and to experience motherhood in a way that can feel that way. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, that was like, jeez. And you know what? I was actually going to wrap it up and say it's all about preparing yourself and taking ownership of your life, your situation. You know what I mean? Because I guess society has built us up to kind of just surrender and give in to them and what they say. But how can they be an expert of you and you understand you? Just like you said, you're the one that's connecting with your baby. So how can you tell me? You know, and even when my cousin was giving birth, it was like it was a big gap because she had two before, and I think her last son was 10 at the time.
Okay.
If I'm correct, maybe 8 to 10. There's a big gap. And so it's like, in a way, she's doing it all again. And when we went into the hospital, she was just like, that thing that they put on my belly to monitor the heartbeat, I don't want it. I don't want it. And I'm like, no, you've got to, because I'm the calm one. No, you just got to you've got to listen. She's like, I'm telling you, I'm going to, but she was having the contractions and I'm timing them. And I'm like, this baby's nearly ready. And she's like, yeah. Then it was like, they wanted to check her to see how far dilated she was. She was not having it. So what she kept doing was kept saying, I need to go toilet. And I'm thinking, she's going to have the baby in the toilet because why does she keep going to the toilet?
Yeah.
Then she was in the toilet for about 10 minutes. And then she came out and she's like, I'm ready to have the baby. So it was like a good 45 minutes to an hour of messing. In my eyes, she's messing around the doctors because you don't want to check the baby's heartbeat. You don't want to see how far the baby is dilated. And then you just keep going to the toilet. Why are you running? And this for me was about 6-7 years ago. Yeah. So at the time where I am now in understanding, nowhere near them. In my mind, you just got to listen. You know, he's the head midwife in this hospital.
And that's how so many women think. It's like, you know, they're the ones who have the authority. And so much of my work is really bringing women back to their own authority. And that instinct that your cousin had, that is a natural instinct. You know, we have the instinct to protect, to be in a safe space, to not feel invaded by, you know, anybody checking us or having these contraptions on us. And it's not to say that those things don't make other women feel safe. There are women who that is their safe place, that is where they feel supported, and that's good too. But if you have that instinct to override that, or to say, actually, I need space, or I need a moment, or I need less people in the room, or I need the lights off, or whatever it is that you need, to have the authority to actually speak your truth and know that it will be listened to, I think would make such a difference to all of the birth outcomes and data that we see happening at the moment. And that continues into motherhood. You know, how many women run to the doctor every 2 seconds because they are worried about their body, right? And so again, it's coming into this deep listening of your own intuition, your own instinct, to be able to say, it's not to say that the doctor's not going to be wrong and that you can't use Western medicine to tap into diagnosis, definitely. But there are things that your baby and your body are always cueing to you. And you can start to see those cues earlier if you are tuned in and are supported to be able to understand what those things might mean. And so again, it's confidence. You know, so much of this is giving women their confidence back and empowering them to realize, like, I can make choices that are going to have positive and healthy impacts on my children. And yes, I will use the doctor, but it will be like you're still the sovereign. You're still the one who's got the ultimate, you know, choice at the end of the day. And that's how I would choose to interface with Western medicine. But yeah, I hope that helps women to kind of realize that it doesn't have to be an experience that you give away power. You know, even when it comes to school and it comes to, you know, people telling your child that they have to wear a mask or they have to be vaccinated or any of those kinds of situations. It's always coming back down to your intuition, your instinct, your choice, your research, your knowledge, and then making a choice from that place rather than, you know, fear or pressure or what everybody else is doing.
Definitely.
So, yeah, the more women who can stand in that power, I think the better the next generation will be.
definitely, yeah. Because after that, she had her just like that. Baby come true. Yeah, the day before my birthday as well.
Oh,
It was a birthday present.
oh,
Okay. Thank you,
thank
Nehanda.
you. It's been a
This
pleasure.
has been such a beautiful conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed my own interview, family.
I've enjoyed speaking to you. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, sorry.
Gary.
Let me just put my earring back in there. It's because I'm playing with my hair. Oh no, it's not going in. Right. Sorry, Nehanda. Oh God, right. Yes. So, Nehanda,
Yes.
thank you. How can the people watching this beautiful interview follow you, support what you do, get in touch with you, become a part of your Soul Mama sister circles when they come back? Like, tell us.
Okay, so I'm on Instagram at Soul Mama Coach, and on there I share like all of the news and the latest updates in terms of podcasts and blogs and circles and events. But you can always check out the podcast on all platforms as well. So that is Soul Mama Podcast, and there are at the time of recording there are about 33 episodes to kind of deep dive back into, but that will be growing obviously as we continue. And if people want to get in touch to do, you know, potential one-on-one work or group work, I'm really open to connecting with you further there too. And so you can just email me, which is nehanda@soulmamajourney.com. And obviously you can check out the website as well, which is www.soulmamajourney.com.
Thank you so much, sis. Thank you. And hopefully we connect again soon in the flesh, in the physical.
Exactly. I look forward to it. Keep doing your work, keep moving.
Thank you.
And I look forward to connecting again soon.
Virtual hug. Subscribe, turn on your notification bell, tell a friend to tell a friend, share it, like it, and all of these things. Follow the links below. And until next time, peace and blessings to you.